The Grand Master of Demonic Cultivation by Mo Xiang Tong Xiu. An unofficial reading by Emm Wilde. Book 1. Chapter 7. The Morning Dew. Once in the city, the two walked side by side among the bustling crowd. Suddenly, Lan Wangji asked, "How was the curse mark?" Wei Wuxian replied, "Jinling was buried too close to our good buddy at the time, so he got stained by quite a bit of resentment. It's faded a little, but not entirely. We'll probably have to find the complete corpse, or at least the head, before I can think of a way to get rid of it once and for all. But it's not an issue." Good Buddy was the fellow who had been dismembered. Since they didn't know his identity, Wei Wuxian had suggested that they call him Good Buddy. Lan Wangji didn't say anything, but he didn't object either, so it was technically a silent agreement. Of course, he never used the term of address himself. Lan Wangji asked, "How little is a little?" Wei Wuxian gestured a measurement with his hands and replied, "A little is a little. How do I explain it? Do you want me to strip to show you?" Lan Wangji's brows twitched slightly, seeming to really be concerned that he would strip on the street. He said flatly, "Strip after we return." Wei Wuxian laughed and then spun around and walked backwards for a bit. Before, in order to escape as soon as possible, he'd tried very hard to make himself unlikable. He'd done plenty of embarrassing things, feigning madness and acting like an idiot. Now that his identity had been exposed, anyone else would have wanted to dig a hole to hide in out of embarrassment once they thought back to all the things that they had done. But Wei Wuxian had always been someone with a thick skin, so he still acted like nothing was the matter. That being said, someone with the slightest bit of shame would never do something like climb into someone else's bed in the middle of the night, forcibly try to get into the same bathtub, demand to know if he was pretty after putting on makeup, or other such antics. But he pretended not to remember anything, so naturally, Lan Wangji wasn't going to voluntarily mention it either. The two had been acting as if nothing had happened, meaning today was the first time since then that he'd made such a joke. After he was done laughing, Wei Wuxian composed himself. "Hung Wenjun, do you think the same group that threw our good buddy's arm into the Mo Manor to attack your clan juniors was also the one who sewed his legs onto another corpse before burying the whole thing in the wall?" In both the past and the present, he had always called Lan Wangji by his birth name in his own head. But recently, he'd gotten used to using his venerable sobriquet every day. Besides, using this form of address carried a certain flavor he'd developed a taste for. It pretended to be serious, yet had an odd sense of silliness. So he continued to use the name outside half-jokingly. "Two groups," Lan Wangji replied. "So, we are basically of the same mind," Wei Wuxian said. "Going to all the trouble of sewing the legs onto another corpse and then hiding them in a wall, clearly not wanting the limbs to be discovered. If that's the case, then the left arm wouldn't have been purposefully thrown out to attack the disciples of the Lan clan of Guzu, since that would for sure attract attention and investigation. One took great pains to hide the limbs away. The other struck rashly, fearing the limbs wouldn't be discovered. The two groups couldn't be one and the same." He'd said everything there was to say. There didn't seem to be anything left for Lan Wangji to add, but still he "mm'd" in reply. Wei Wuxian spun back around and talked as he walked. The legs hider knew about the Ni clan of Qingzhi's saber offering hall customs, while the left arm tosser knew the movements of the Lan clan of Guzu. The two parties are not simple. The mystery thickens. "One step at a time," Lan Wangji said. "How did you recognize me?" Wei Wuxian asked. "Think for yourself," Lan Wangji replied. They went back and forth, questioning and answering without pause. Wei Wuxian had originally wanted to catch Lan Wangji by surprise and tempt out a blurted response to his question, but the attempt had been a failure. He wasn't discouraged, though, and rapidly swerved the topic to something else. "I've never come to Yu Ying before. In the past, I've always got other people to hunt for information. Let me slack off a little and trouble you with doing the work this time. Will Hung Wenjun mind? Lan Wangji immediately turned to leave, and Wei Wuxian quickly called after him. Stop! Hung Wenjun, may I ask where you're going? Lan Wangji looked back. To the cultivation clan that is stationed in this area. Wei Wuxian tugged on the tassel of his sword and reeled him back in. What are you doing, knocking on their door? This is their domain. Even if they know anything, they won't tell you. Either because they can't handle it and want to cover that up because it's humiliating, or because they adamantly refuse to let outsiders stick their nose in. Esteemed Hung Wenjun, it's not that I'm trying to discredit you, but you really can't work right without me, huh? It'd be a miracle if you managed to get any information, the way you hunt for it. What he said was a little blunt, but in Lan Wangji's gaze, beneath his eyelashes, there was nothing but softness. He answered quietly, Wei Wuxian laughed. What's with the to this too? His mind was delighted at the opportunity to tease. Only knowing how to say he is so dull. How should information be sought? Lan Wangji asked. Wei Wuxian pointed in a direction. By going there, of course. The place he pointed to was a long, wide street. Along the sides of the street hung showy store signs of various sizes, bright, incredibly eye-catching red cloths wafting in the wind. Every store had their doors wide open and round black jugs displayed outside. There were waiters carrying trays of small wine cups, slapping their chests and recommending brews. The wafting, fragrant scent of strong spirits filled the streets. It was no wonder Wei Wuxian had found himself walking slower and slower earlier. When they reached the intersection, he came to a complete stop and pulled Lan Wangji to a stop too. Wei Wuxian said seriously, The waiters in places like these are usually young and sharp-witted, fast and efficient, and since there are so many customers every day, talk runs rampant. Word of strange occurrences never escapes their eyes or their ears. Lan Wangji and didn't disagree, but a certain assumption was already written across his face. You clearly only want to drink. Wei Wuxian pretended that he couldn't read his expression. He yanked on Lan Wangji's sword tassel and stepped into the tavern district, with eyes beaming. Immediately, several waiters from different taverns approached, surrounding him, each more enthusiastic than the next. Try a taste? It's a locally famous He family brew. Try this one, Gonzi. Tasting is free. If you enjoy it, then please come patronize our humble shop. This liquor doesn't smell strong, but the after effect is sure to satisfy you. If you can still stand after drinking this, I'll change my surname to yours. Having heard this, Wei Wuxian exclaimed, Great! He took the bowl of liquor that the waiter was holding and tossed it back, then grinned and showed him the empty bottom of the bowl. Changing your surname? Surprisingly, the waiter didn't cower. Instead, he held his head high and spoke with much gusto. I meant drink an entire jug. Then give me 3 jugs, Wei Wuxian said. The waiter was overjoyed and rushed back to the tavern. Wei Wuxian turned to Lan Wangji to explain himself. It's business. We help their establishment first, and then talk after. It's easier to open mouths after all of this has been taken care of. Lan Wangji paid the bill. The two entered the tavern. There were wooden tables and chairs installed inside for guests to rest and chat while they drank. There was another waiter inside who perceived Lan Wangji's dress and demeanor to be shockingly divine and didn't dare to receive him poorly, so he gathered his strength and scrubbed the furniture hard before he dared direct them to their seats. 2 jugs sat next to Wei Wuxian's feet while another was held in his hand. He bantered a bit with the waiter, getting chummy with him, before cutting to the chase. Were there any strange happenings in the area? The waiter was a talkative one, too, so he rubbed his hands together and asked, What sort of strange things? Haunted houses, abandoned graves, dismembered corpses, that kind of thing. The waiter darted his eyes between the two of them and said, I see. What do you guys do, you and him? Haven't you already guessed? Wei Wuxian said. The waiter said with understanding, True enough. It's easy to guess. You two must be some kind of prominent cultivators who can fly around riding clouds and whatnot, right? Particularly the one beside you, sir. Usually I've never seen somebody so. Wei Wuxian grinned. So beautiful? The waiter laughed aloud. Listen to you, sir. This Ganzi is going to get displeased. Strange happenings, right? There have been some, but the news isn't current. It's from a decade ago. If you head in that direction and walk for another couple of kilometers after leaving the city, you'll see a rather beautifully built manor. Don't know if the establishment plaque is still there, but the place is the Chung residence. What's wrong with the manor? Wei Wuxian asked. A terrible case of clan extermination, the waiter said. You're asking for strange happenings, sir? So of course I'm going to pick the strangest of the strange. The entire family died, and I heard that they were all terrified to death. Lan Wangji appeared thoughtful at hearing this, like he was remembering something. Wei Wuxian paid no attention to him and continued to press for more information. Is there a cultivation clan stationed in this area? To be able to terrify an entire family to death, it had to be the work of an extremely cruel, terrifying, malicious ghost, or belligerent spirit. Not every family had unspeakable, inescapable difficulties like the Ni clan of Qingzhe. Normal cultivation clans wouldn't tolerate such creatures lurking in their territory. The waiter replied, There is. Why wouldn't there be? So did they handle the case, then? Wei Wuxian asked. Handle? The waiter slung the rag over his shoulder and sat down too, spilling in all seriousness the burden he had been holding back. Ganzi, do you know the name of the cultivation clan that was stationed in Yuyang? It's Chung. The family that died is them. They're all dead, so who's left to handle anything? The Chung family that had been exterminated was the cultivation clan that was stationed here? Wei Wuxian had never heard of any Chung clan from Yuyang, so they must not have been a prominent clan of any repute. But to have an entire clan be exterminated was definitely a shocking, huge event. Not a trifling matter at all. He hurriedly asked, How was the Chung family exterminated? The waiter replied, This is all hearsay, yeah? That Chung family. One night there suddenly came the sound of banging on the door, and it was coming from inside the residence. Banging? Wei Wuxian asked. That's right. The banging was so loud it shocked the heavens. There was yelling and crying coming from inside, like everyone was locked in and couldn't get out. That's just too strange, ain't it? The door was barred from the inside, so if people inside wanted to get out, just remove the bar. Why slap the door? It's not like anyone outside can do anything. Besides, you can't get out through the door. Don't you know how to hop over a wall? The people outside were griping, and everyone in this area knew that the Chung family was an amazing clan of cultivation. Their family head, I think his name was Chung Ping, had a sword that can fly, and he could stand on it and soar about. If something really did happen in there that the family themselves couldn't handle, wouldn't regular folks be seeking death if they had approached? So no one put up a ladder or hopped over the wall to check inside. They went on for an entire night. The wailing grew softer and softer. The next day, when the sun came up, the entrance to the Chung residence opened by itself. The entire household, men and women, about a dozen masters and over 50 servants, were sitting or sprawled out, foaming at the mouth. They had all been terrified to death. The tavern owner looked over and yelled, You're dead! What are you doing, chatting about the cursed dead of the past and not working? Another 5 jugs, Wei Wuxian said. Lan Wangji paid enough for 10, and the owner's face immediately split into a wide smile. He instructed the waiter, Keep the guests in good company, don't go anywhere. Continue the story, Wei Wuxian said. With no more fear of disturbance, the waiter thus gave all he had in telling the tale, with all the drama that it warranted. Ever since then, for a long time after, If passers-by went to travel in the dark of night near the Chung residence, they would hear banging on the door coming from the inside. Just think. They were the ones riding clouds, cultivating, and exterminating monsters. They've seen plenty of evil before, and yet they were still terrified to death. If you walk the night road too often, sooner or later you'll run into ghosts. Even after they were buried, you could still hear the sound of banging in their coffins. Though they say that the family's head, Chung Ping, was out at the time, so he escaped disaster. Didn't you say the entire family died? Wei Wuxian asked. Relax, I'm just getting to it, the waiter assured. They all did die. I say escaped disaster, and that was temporary too. A couple of years later, the master Changping still died, and this time the death was even more terrifying. It was a death by Linqi, with a sword. You don't need me to explain what death by Linqi is, right? It's when you take a knife or a sword and slice up a person, cut them 3,600 times until the flesh is all sliced off, leaving only the bones. Of course, Wei Wuxian knew what Lingxi was. If a book were to be written entitled 1,000 Ways to Die Violently, no one would be more qualified than him to author it. He raised his hand. I get it. Then, buddy, do you know the reason why the Chung family was exterminated? The waiter replied, I heard that it was a setup by another cultivating sect. There's no doubt about that, though. Otherwise, how could a group of live cultivating folks no less, be so unable to escape death? They must have been trapped inside by something. Or someone. The tavern owner, afraid the topic would dampen their good time, had thus brought them 2 small plates of peanuts and melon seeds. Wei Wuxian nodded his thanks, then munched on the melon seeds as he continued his questions. Did anyone ever find out just what that something or someone was? The waiter laughed. Ain't that a funny joke, Gonzi? We're just some nobodies trying to make our way for a living. What do we know about the affairs of a bunch of lords who fly around in the sky all day? You're all cultivators, sir, so you should know better than me. I only heard some gossip about how they offended someone that they shouldn't have. In any case, since then all the evil things around here have been left running amok, so no one can beat them back. Alas. Wei Wuxian wondered, someone he shouldn't have offended? That's right. The waiter ate a couple of the peanuts. All the judges and grievances of those cultivation clans, or sects, or whatever, are so complicated. I figured the Chung family must have been targeted by other cultivators. Murdering for treasure is a common thing, right? That's what the storytellers all say, and that's what's written in legends and romances to boot. Anyways, although I don't know exactly who it was, it seems like it was related to an infamous evil overlord. Wei Wuxian smiled as he brought the liquor bowl to his lips, side-eyeing the waiter. Let me guess, you're going to say that you don't know who the evil overlord is, right? The waiter laughed. Wrong, sir. That I know. I think it was the old patriarch. Yiling patriarch. Wei Wuxian choked and letting out a stream of bubbles into the liquor bowl. What? Him again? The waiter said with conviction, Yes, that's right. Surname Wei. I think he's called Wei Wuqian. When others mention him, they always sound both hateful and scared. Wei Wuxian reviewed the facts in his head and finally confirmed 2 things. 1, he had never visited Yuyang before. And 2, none of the people he'd ever killed were done in through Linqi. This was an absurd accusation. He twisted his head to look questioningly at Lan Wangji, seeming to want an explanation from him. Lan Wangji, who had been waiting for this look, said, Let us go. Wei Wuxian immediately understood. Lan Wangji had something to say about this, and it would be unsuitable to say in front of the others in the tavern. He rose to his feet. Let's go then. The bill is paid, right? Little buddy, we're gonna stash the liquor that we bought here with you. Once we're done with our business, we'll come back to finish it off. He added, half-jokingly, Don't cheat me, eh? The waiter, who had already polished off over half the plate of peanuts by himself, protested, We would never. Our shop treats neither children nor the elderly. You just leave that liquor here, sir. No worries. We won't close our doors until you are back. Hey, Ganzi, are you two headed to the Jung Clan residence now? Wow, that's amazing. I'm a local, and I haven't even gone yet. I only dare to sneak peeks from a distance. Are you two going to go inside? What do you plan on doing? Wei Wuxian replied, We're also just going to sneak a peek from a distance. This young waiter was quick-witted and very much a natural at socializing. So now that they'd been chatting for a bit, he no longer took Wei Wuxian as a stranger. He shuffled over, wanting to put his arm around his shoulder. Is this profession work hard? Do you two make a lot of money? You must, right? It's so respectable. Hey, can I ask something? Is it hard to enter the trade? He was just babbling on, but then abruptly shut up as if struck by fear, peeping off over to the side. He asked in a low whisper, Ganzi, the gentleman next to you, what's he glaring at me for? Wei Wuxian looked over, following his gaze just in time to see Lan Wangji twist his head and rise to his feet to leave the tavern. He said, him, huh? That friend of mine has been raised in a very strict household. He detests seeing people with their arms around each other in front of him. Isn't that a little weird? The waiter sulkily removed his arm as he whispered, It is. Look at the way he's glaring. You'd think that I was putting my arm around his wife. Lan Wangji's sharp hearing meant that it was impossible that he hadn't heard that, even though the words were whispered. It did make one wonder what his thoughts were on the matter. Wei Wuxian was holding back his laughter so desperately that he was about to sustain an internal injury. He quickly turned to the waiter. I finished a jug. Huh? The waiter replied. Wei Wuxian pointed at himself. Still standing. Only then did the young waiter remember what he had said. I'll change my surname to yours. He quickly exclaimed, that's amazing. I'm not trying to flatter you, but you're the first person that I've seen that could still stand upright and speak without your tongue tangling up after finishing a jug. What's your surname, sir? Wei Wuxian replied, I'm... Then he remembered how the waiter had said Wei Wuxian earlier, and the corners of his mouth twitched. He calmly said, Surname Lan. The waiter was a thick-skinned one, too. He announced loudly, without skipping a beat, Yes, from today onward, my surname is Lan. Beneath the bright red sign that invited guests inside, it seemed that Lan Wangji's stride faltered, just for a moment. Wei Wuxian was smirking slyly. He strode over with his hands folded behind his back, then patted Lan Wangji's shoulder. Many thanks to Han Wenjun for the kindness of paying the bill. I got the waiter to name himself after you. After leaving the city, the two headed in the direction that the waiter had pointed. As the number of travelers thinned, the woods thickened. Wei Wuxian asked, Why didn't you let me keep grilling him with questions earlier? Lan Wangji replied, Details of the Chung clan of Yu Yong's case have suddenly returned to me. I know of the rumors, and thus there was no need to ask any further. Before you tell me, let me ask you something, Wei Wuxian said. Just confirm this for me now. The Chung family extermination wasn't my doing, right? Even putting aside the fact that he had already been dead 10 years ago, and his soul had been well behaved as heck, there was no way he'd forget charging up to some clan doorstep and annihilating the whole family. It was not you, Lan Wangji confirmed. I see, Wei Wuxian said. He felt like he had been transported back to that particular time in his life when everyone had yelled for him to be beaten, a time when he lived worse than the gutter rat. He had been blamed for every bad deed, and people had dumped buckets of crap on him as and when they pleased. If the little grandson of an old Lord Grandpa next door lost weight from refusing to eat, even that could be blamed on him. Surely the boy was just too horrified by the stories of the Yiling Patriarch's terrible massacres with the Ghost General. Yet, unexpectedly, Lan Wangji added, You did not kill them, but it is related to you. What's the connection? Wei Wuxian asked. There are two, Lan Wangji said. First, There is a character implicated in this case who is linked to your mother. Wei Wuxian paused in his step. He didn't know how to feel, nor did he know what face to make. He asked hesitantly, My mother? Wei Wuxian had been the son of a family servant of the Jiang clan of Yunmeng, Wei Chengzi, and his mother had been the wandering cultivator, Kengxi Senren. Jiang Fengmain and his wife had been well acquainted with his parents, but Jiang Fengmain had rarely reminisced aloud regarding his old friends, and Jiang Fengmain's wife, Zhu Xian, had never spoken well of them to him. Honestly, things had been pretty good if she didn't whip him, or tell him to scram, or kneel in the ancestral hall, or stay away from Jiangcheng. Many of the stories that he'd heard about his parents were told to him by others, so he actually didn't know much more than anyone else. Lan Wangji also stopped, and turned around to meet his gaze. Have you ever heard of one named Xiao Xingchen? Wei Wuxian thought for a moment, and then replied, No. No is correct, Lan Wangji said. It was 12 years ago when this man emerged from the mountain and achieved fame, and now there is no one who speaks of him. 12 years ago happened to be the year right after the siege of the Yiling burial mounds, so they had just missed each other. Wei Wuxian asked, Which mountain was it, and who was his teacher? Lan Wangji replied, The mountain is unknown. Xiao Jingjian studied the way of the Tao under the tutelage of Biaoshen Senren. Now Wei Wuxian understood why Lan Wangji had said that this man was linked to his mother. He said, That means this Xiao Jingjian is technically my mother's marital brother, huh? Kengxi Shanren had also come from Biaoshan Sanren's school. This Baoshan Sanren was a hermit cultivator who had lived hidden away from the secular world. Apparently, she was a cultivator of the same generation as Wen Mao and Lan An. Other celebrities of that generation had long since dissipated in both body and soul. Only Biaoshan Sanren still walked the earth. If that really was true, then she should be many hundreds of years old, which proved that she was in possession of incredible cultivation. In the years ruled by those of her generation, with Wen Mao as leader, clans had flourished while sects declined. Leading factions of cultivation authority that were bound by blood ties sprouted like bamboo shoots in the spring. Any cultivator with a lick of fame founded their own sect, and yet this master chose to retreat to the mountain hermitage. Her cultivation name was Baoshen, meaning to embrace the mountain. Which mountain was she embracing? No one knew. But it was precisely because no one knew that it was called a hermetic retreat. If she could be easily found, it wouldn't have been considered so. This elder led a hermetic life upon an unknown immortal mountain. She often secretly picked up orphans and brought them up the mountain, taking them in as her disciples. However, every disciple had to swear an oath, focus only on cultivation in their life. Never descend the mountain, and never enter the secular world. If they did, no matter the reason, they would never be allowed to return. They would have to survive on their own and train in hardship within the secular world, never again to have any ties to their one-time school. People said that Baoshan Sanren was worthy to be called an enlightened master, and this rule of hers truly demonstrated great foresight. Over hundreds of years, she only had 3 disciples leave the mountain: Yanling Diaoren, Sungse Sanren, and Xiao Xingchen. 3 disciples, not one of whom had come to a good end. Wei Wuxian had known from a young age what the end was for the first 2 disciples, so there was no need to listen to those 2 tales again. So what Lan Wangji succinctly told him was the story of the deeds of that last disciple, Wei Wuxian's mother's youngest martial brother. When Xiao Jingchen emerged from the mountain, he was 17. Although Lan Wangji had never met him in person, he had heard from others of the man's noble bearing. At the time, it had only been a few years since the end of the Sunshot campaign, and the siege at the Yiling burial mounds had just concluded. The great clans dominated and were recruiting for talent all over the place, all to serve their own purposes. Xiao Xingchen emerged from the mountains with the desire to save the common world. Immensely skilled and taught by a true master, he charged the mountain in his first night hunt with his one Taoist whisk, his one longsword, and his one lone person, and claimed first place, winning fame in one battle. At the sight of this young cultivator, who was pure in character and accomplished in cultivation, the cultivation clans all felt great admiration. They all sent invitations to him, but Xiao Xingchen courteously denied all of them, making it clear that he did not wish to affiliate with any clan at all. Instead, together with his most intimate friend, he was determinedly set on establishing a brand new sect that did not emphasize blood ties. Xiao Xingchen's character was as soft as pampas grass, but his heart was as strong as a rock. Gentle on the outside, steadfast on the inside, and spurning contamination by corrupt forces. At the time, if difficult matters arose, any and all would rush to seek help from him first and foremost. Furthermore, he never rejected anyone, so opinion of him was extremely high. The obliteration of the Chung clan of Yuyang happened right around then. One fateful day, the family head of the Chung clan of Yuyang took a few family members with him to attend a night hunt. Over half a month later, he suddenly received the awful news during this travel and hurried home. After the period of mourning, it was discovered upon further investigation that someone had maliciously destroyed the protection array from the house, allowing the entry of a band of cruel and belligerent evil spirits. Beyond that, everything was a mystery. Normally, few people paid heed to tragedies of such small clans, but this situation was unique. The Sunshot campaign had long since ended, and the siege of the burial mounds was just over. On the surface, the state of the world could have been said to be somewhat peaceful. But to have such an incident occur out of the blue immediately caused huge waves among the cultivation clans. There were many alarmists spreading the rumor that the Yiling patriarch Wei Wuxian had returned to the world for revenge. However, there was never any evidence of that, and no way of catching the murderers. Of course, Xiao Xingchen could not remain indifferent to this case. He voluntarily took it on right then and there to seek the truth for Chengping. The name of the murderer was Zhu Yang. This Zhu Yang was younger than Xiao Xingchen, a boy through and through. However, his odious temperament was not hampered by his young age. At 15, he was already a major thug known far and wide in the Kui Prefect area. His smile was sweet, his methods vicious, and his personality cruel. In Kui Prefecture, everyone's face would change colors at the mention of Zhu Yang's name. He grew up on the streets as an urchin and seemed to have a grudge against Chengping's father, which he nurtured for many years. It was revenge, among other reasons, that prompted him to commit this violent act. After Xiao Qingchen had figured out the truth, he crossed 3 provinces and caught Zhu Yang, who was still freewheeling around and brawling with others, and quite self-satisfied. At the time, the Jin clan of Lanling was holding a symposium at their residential mansion, Golden Carp Tower, and all the major clans were present to discuss and debate Taoism. There, Xiao Xingchen dragged Zhu Yang forward for all to see. The whole story was explained in detail, and severe punishment was pleaded for. Xiao Xingchen had laid down every piece of evidence clearly. Most of the clans had no objection. Only one clan opposed him vehemently, and that was the Jin clan of Lanling. Objecting under those circumstances would risk universal condemnation, said Wei Wuxian. Could Zhu Yang have been a favorite of Jin Wenqian? A guest cultivator, Lan Wangji replied. He was their guest cultivator? Wei Wuxian asked. The Jin clan of Lanling should have ranked one of the 4 major clans by then, right? Why invite a little thug to be a guest cultivator? This is the second connection, Lan Wangji said. He stared intently at Wei Wuxian's eyes and continued slowly. It was because of the yin tiger tally. Wei Wuxian's heart violently lurched. He was definitely no stranger to the name yin tiger tally. On the contrary, nobody was more familiar. Of all the spiritual weapons that he had refined while alive, it was the most terrifying, and at the same time the most desired by all. The function of a tiger tally was to command. As the name implied, those who possessed the yin tiger tally possessed commanding power over corpses, ghosts, and belligerent spirits of all sorts, forcing their obedience. Back when Wei Wuxian had first created it, he hadn't thought too much about it. Using his primordial spirit alone to control his corpse puppets and belligerent spirits made it inevitable that there would be some times when he got tired. He recalled having seen a rare iron spirit in the stomach of a Yao beast once, and so he had retrieved it, refined it, and forged the yin tiger tally. Wei Wuxian had only used the tiger tally once after it was forged. He had instantly realized that it was bad news. The power of the yin tiger tally was far stronger and more terrifying than he had expected. He had originally wanted to use it simply as a supplement, but unexpectedly its power showed the faint potential to overwhelm its own creator. Moreover, the thing didn't recognize one master. If someone got their hands on it, no matter who that person was, good or bad, friend or foe, it would be theirs to use. The disaster had already been born into the world. It wasn't that Wei Wuxian had never thought of destroying it, but forging the tiger tally had been no easy task, and destroying it would have been just as difficult, demanding all his energy and time. Besides, he had already vaguely sensed that he was in a bad situation. Sooner or later, everyone would be after his life. The yin tiger tally served as an immense force of a deterrence. People wouldn't dare target him incautiously while he had this spiritual weapon, so he kept it as temporary protection. All he did was split the tiger tally into two, so its powers could only be activated when assembled, thus making it so that it could never be used unless absolutely necessary. He had only ever used it twice, and each time blood had flowed like rivers. The first time had been during the Sunshot campaign. After using it the second time, he finally made up his mind to thoroughly destroy half of the tally. Before he could destroy the other half, the burial mounds were besieged. Whatever came of that, well, it had no longer been within his means to care. Wei Wuxian was confident enough to provide commentary on his own creations, and on this topic he was quite sure that even if the clan that had snatched the remaining piece placed it on an altar to worship every day, with offerings of tall incense and frequent prostration, the only remaining half of the yin tiger tally was no more than a scrap of iron. However, Lan Wangji revealed something shocking. This Zhu Yang appeared to have been able to reverse engineer the other half of the yin tiger tally. Zhu Yang had been very young, but also unusually smart, as well as an incredibly perverse heretic. The Jin clan of Lanling discovered that he actually could roughly piece together the other half of the yin tiger tally based on the half left behind. Although the duration of use for the assembled, restored item was not long, nor was it as powerful as the original, it could already produce incredibly terrifying results. Wei Wuxian understood now. The Jin clan of Lanling still needed Zhu Yang to continue the restoration of the yin tiger tally, so they had to shield him. Maybe the reason Zhu Yang had annihilated the Zheng clan hadn't entirely been wrongs committed against him when he was an impoverished urchin. Maybe he had used the lives of this family to test the power of the restored yin tiger tally. No wonder the rumors had connected Wei Wuxian with the clan annihilation case. He could practically imagine how cultivators had gritted their teeth. That Wei Wuxian, if he hadn't made such a thing, there wouldn't be so many disasters in the human world. In any case, back to the events at Golden Carp Tower. The Jin clan of Lanling was determined to shield Zhu Yang, yet Zhao Xingchen would not yield to persuasion or coercion. The two were stuck in a stalemate, and this finally alerted Qi Fengzun, that is, Ni Mingju, who had not attended this particular symposium. He was called upon to fly over from elsewhere and hurry to make an appearance. Although Ni Mingju was a younger generation than Jin Guanshen, he possessed a stern character. He refused to tolerate, refused to appease, and after a severe scolding, Jin Guanshen was too embarrassed to speak and lost a great deal of face. Ni Mingju, ever violent in temper, drew his saber on the spot and was ready to execute Zhu Yang. Even when his sworn younger brother Lin Fengzun, that is, Jin Guanyao, went up to smooth things over, he was furiously told to leave and viciously berated until he hid behind Lan Shichen, not daring to utter one more word. Finally, the Jin clan of Lanling had no choice but to concede. Ever since he'd been dragged to the Golden Carp Tower by Zhao Xingchen, Zhu Yang had been without fear the entire time, knowing that he had a strong backing. Even when Ni Mingju's saber was pressed against his neck, he was still grinning happily. Before he was carried away, he said quite warmly to Zhao Xingchen, "Diaozhen, don't you forget me. Just you wait and see." Having listened thus far, Wei Wuxian knew that "wait and see" was a certain promise to make Zhao Xingchen pay an incomparably excruciating price. As deserving of their name, the Jin clan of Lanling was the most thick-skinned of the clans. Although they had agreed to get rid of Zhu Yang in front of all of the clans at the Golden Carp Tower, the moment Ni Mingju was out of sight, they swiftly locked Zhu Yang in the dungeons and changed the verdict to imprisonment, never to be released. Once Ni Mingju learned this, he was outraged. He exerted pressure on them once more, but the Jin clan of Lanling dragged their feet and refused to give that person over, no matter what. The other clans all watched this spectacle from the sidelines with their arms crossed. Who would have thought that, not long after Ni Mingju would suffer a qi deviation and die? He had cultivated faster than any of the previous Ni clan leaders before him, but also died sooner than any of them as well. With the most difficult man gone, the Jin clan of Lanling grew ever more unscrupulous as they brewed more crooked ideas. Jin Guanshen began thinking of ways to pull Zhu Yang out of the jail to continue the restoration of the Yin Tiger Tally and research into its secrets. However, this was still ultimately a dishonorable affair. It wouldn't do to pull a criminal who murdered an entire clan out of jail without a proper cause. Thus, they turned their eyes to Cheng Ping. They coerced and tempted him, harassing him non-stop until finally the Jin clan of Lanling successfully persuaded Cheng Ping to change his story. He withdrew all the grievances that he had stated before and announced publicly that the clan extermination case had nothing to do with Zhu Yang. Having heard the news, Zhao Shengchen went knocking and demanding answers. Cheng Ping, full of resignation, said to him, "Other than ceding, what else could I have done? If I can't endure this, the rest of my family will make no way of living. Many thanks, Jiaozhen, but please don't help me any more. If you help me again now, you will be harming me. I don't want the Cheng clan of Yuyang to end here." And thus was the tiger released back into the mountain. Wei Wuxian fell into deep silence. If he were Cheng Ping, it wouldn't have mattered whether the Jin clan of Lanling were a prominent clan who abused their power and could deceive the world as they willed. It wouldn't matter who promised him the future of glory and luxury. He would never give in. On the contrary, he would personally visit the dungeons at night and cut Zhu Yang into pieces alive, then summon his spirit back and do it again, over and over, until the boy wished that he had never been born into this world. However, not everyone shared the urge to drag an opponent down along with them. There were still several Cheng family members alive, and Cheng Ping himself was still young, with no wife or no children. He had only just started on the path of cultivation. He had to carefully weigh his options, no matter whether it was the lives of his remaining family or his fortune in cultivation being threatened. After all, Wei Wuxian wasn't Chengping. He couldn't be outraged on his behalf, nor could he help him bear his fear and endure this torture of both body and mind. After Zhu Yang was released, he carried out his revenge as expected, except he didn't enact revenge on Zhao Xingchen. Zhao Xingchen had emerged into the world alone and only made one good friend after descending the mountain. This friend, known as Song Lan, was also a reputable Taoist at the time, aloof, proud, and highly regarded. The two had both wanted to establish a sect that focused on shared ideals rather than nepotism. They could have been considered the best of friends, and they shared the same aspirations and interests. People of their time described them with such words: Zhao Xingchen, bright moon, cool breeze, ever decent. Song Zichen dauntlessly scorns the snow and frost. And so, Zhu Yang decided to target his attack there. He reused the same tricks to thoroughly annihilate Beizhu Temple, the place where Song Lang had grown up and studied. In addition to that, he hatched and successfully carried out a plot to blind Song Lan's eyes with caustic powder. This time, he was experienced in clan annihilation. He was especially efficient in the act, leaving no clues behind. While everyone knew that it was definitely him, what was the use of knowing? There was no evidence. Jin Guanshan had purposefully shielded him, and on top of that, Shi Fengyun of the Thunderous Temper had passed away. Shockingly, there was no one else who could do anything about him. Having listened to this point, Wei Wuxian suddenly found it a little odd. Although Lan Wangji seemed indifferent to worldly matters and too uncaring to meddle, based on Wei Wuxian's past understanding of him, he abhorred evil no less keenly than Ni Huisang's older brother. The Jin clan of Lan Ling's actions had been less than savory back then, and Lan Wangji never hesitated to speak out. Even now, he rarely attended their clan's symposiums, and was completely unsupportive. 2 consecutive, ominous instances of murder would have been the talk of the town back then. Lan Wangji could not have sat back quietly. So how come he hadn't brought Zhu Yang under control? Just as he was about to ask, he remembered the discipline whip scars on Lan Wangji's back. One lash from the discipline whip was deadly enough. There must have been a period of many years when Lan Wangji was forbidden to step outside the clan's walls if he had committed a grave crime that resulted in so many lashes. These incidents had probably happened when Lan Wangji was being punished, or when he was nursing his wounds. No wonder he could only say that he had heard rumors. Those scars really bothered Wei Wuxian for some reason, but it wasn't his place to ask directly, so the feeling would have to be suppressed for the time being. He asked, so what happened to Zhao Xingchen Zhaozhen after that? After that, of course, the curtains could only drop dismally on this play. In the past, Zhao Xingchen had bid farewell to his master and left the mountain, vowing to never return. He took his promise very seriously, but Song Lan was blinded and now suffered further grave injury, and so he broke his own vow. Carrying Song Lan on his back, he returned to the Baoshan Sanren Hermitage to beg his master to save his good friend. In consideration for their past relationship as master and disciple, Baoshan Sanren accepted his request. Zhao Xingchen thus descended the mountain again, and his whereabouts had remained unknown ever since. Another year passed before Song Lan even emerged from the mountain. The people of the world were astounded to find that his once thoroughly blinded eyes could see light anew. But the truth was this. It wasn't that Baoshan Sanren's healing abilities were godly, but that Zhao Xingchen had dug out his own eyes and gifted them to Song Lan, who had only been caught up in this mess because of him. Song Lan wanted to seek revenge against Zhu Yang at first, but by then Jin Guanshan had already passed away. Jin Guanyao had inherited control of the Jin clan of Lanling and risen to the position of cultivation chief. To prove that this would be the dawning of a new regime, the moment he ascended the stage, he got rid of Zhu Yang and never spoke of the Yin Tiger Tally's restoration again. In the hopes of restoring his clan's damaged reputation, he implemented all sorts of restorative and reassuring measures to push any rumors down. Song Lan pursued the lingering traces of his good friend of times past. At first, one still heard talk of where he had gone. However, as time passed, there were no more words to be heard. Since the Chung clan of Yuyang was also a small, unknown family, many things about this whole affair gradually returned to dust. After listening to this long, long story, Wei Wuxian let out a quiet sigh, and sense of regret and sympathy sprouting in him. To end like this over something that originally had nothing to do with him, that truly is... Zhao Xingchen had been born a few years earlier, or if I had died a few years later, then things wouldn't have turned out like this. If I were alive, I wouldn't have ignored something like this. I would have made friends with such a character. He then immediately felt both amused and annoyed at the same time. He mocked his own words, thinking, I would have taken care of it, huh? How? If I were still alive back then, the Jiang clan extermination case probably wouldn't have even gotten an investigation. They'd just blame it all on me and be done with it. If Zhao Xingchen Zhaozhen saw me on the road and I tried to get chummy with him, he'd most likely have given me a round of whacking with his whisk. They had already walked past the Chang residence and come to the cemetery nearby. Wei Wuxian saw the word Chang in dark red on the ceremonial gateway. How did Cheng Ping die afterwards? Who was the one who killed the surviving family with Lin Qi? Lan Wangji hadn't answered yet when, through the blue-tinged colors of dusk, there came a bang, bang, bang sound of a door being slammed. At least, it sounded like a door being slammed. But at the same time, it wasn't. It was forceful and panicked, without a moment of pause. It also sounded dull, like it was separated from their ears by layers of something. The two both froze. There were over 50 members of the Chung clan of Yuyang, and presently they were lying in their coffins, banging on the lids from the inside. They were banging wildly, just like the night when they had been terrified to death, but no one would ever answer and open the door for them. This was what the tavern waiter had spoken of, the sound of coffins banging, coming from the Chung family graves. But the tavern waiter had also said that the hauntings took place 10 years ago, and had long since stopped. So why had the bangings just so happened to start again the moment they arrived? Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji restrained their breathing, at the same time, and noiselessly slunk closer. Once they were leaning behind the pillar of the ceremonial gateway, they both saw that at the center of the cemetery, among the tombstones, there appeared to be a hole. It was an incredibly deep hole, and next to it were mounds of dirt that appeared to have been recently piled there. A soft sound came from the inside of the hole. Someone was digging graves. The two quietly held their breath and watched intently, waiting for the person inside the hole to come out on their own. Not half an instant's time later, two figures leapt up lightly from the open grave. Luckily, both Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji were both good enough with eyesight that they were able to tell who the two individuals were. The two were firmly attached to one another like conjoined babies, with one carrying the other on its back. They were also dressed entirely in black, so it was extremely difficult to discern detail. The one who'd leapt up stood there with their back to them, long-armed and long-legged. The one carried on their back, however, had their head and limbs drooping, with no sign of life. But that was how it should have been. Since it had been dug out of a grave, it had to be a corpse. Thus, lifeless was normal. Just as Wei Wuxian was thinking this, the gravedigger whipped his head around and saw them. The person's face was shrouded in a thick, black haze. Their facial features and appearance couldn't be discerned at all. Wei Wuxian knew the person must have cast some sort of strange spell to conceal their face. Lan Wangji had already brandished Bichen, swept into the cemetery, and crossed swords. The gravedigger reacted extremely fast. When they saw the blue glare of Bichen's attack, They made a hand seal and summoned their own striking sword glare. However, this sword glare was the same as their face, all wound up with a coiling black haze, so its color and aura couldn't be discerned. With a body carried on their back, the gravedigger was forced to fight in an odd posture. The two sword glares clashed multiple times before Lan Wangji called Bichen back. He gripped it in hand, a layer of frost rapidly overtaking his expression. Wei Wuxian knew why his expression had turned so piercingly cold. It was because even an outsider like him could easily tell from the exchange of attacks just now that the gravedigger was extraordinarily familiar with Lan Wangji's sword techniques. Lan Wangji did not speak a word as the power of Bichen's thrusts grew ever stronger, and the will of his sword akin to the force of the mountains toppling the seas overturning. The gravedigger was forced back again and again. Seeming to know that they were no match against Lan Wangji while carrying a body on their back, and that they would be captured if this fight continues, they suddenly pulled a dark blue talisman from around their waist. A teleportation talisman. Such talismans could send a person 500 kilometers away in an instant, but they also exhausted an immense amount of spiritual power, and the caster would need ample time to regain their strength. Those without such power couldn't use them, which was why they were not widely in use despite being high-grade items. Wei Wuxian saw that the person was going to escape. He hurriedly struck out twice with his palm, then bent one knee, smashing a fist to the ground. The power of this punch penetrated through layer after layer of earth, reaching the deepest parts of soil and piercing through the thick coffin lids. It stimulated the deceased trapped within to a near-crazed state. There was a sound of cracking, then 4 bloody arms sprouted from the ground, forcibly seizing the left and right legs of the gravedigger. The gravedigger was unperturbed. They poured spiritual power into their legs, shocking off the 4 corpse arms and sending them flying. Wei Wuxian pulled out his bamboo flute, and a sharp, piercing melody ripped through the falling night. 2 skulls broke through the ground, their bodies slowly following. They crawled up the length of the gravedigger's leg, entangling their bodies like snakes, their mouths wide open and ready to bite down on their necks and arms. The gravedigger snorted disdainfully, as if they were saying, "Nothing but a petty trick." Spiritual power coursed through their body again, but this time, after sending out the shock wave of spiritual power, they jerked at the talisman that they had held. They had sent the corpse on their back flying as well. Wei Wuxian laughed maniacally, slapping a tombstone. Lan Wangji, on the other hand, seized the limp corpse with one hand while the other lunged with Bichen. When the gravediggers saw the thing that they'd dug out being snatched by another, they didn't dare stick around. They couldn't beat Lan Wangji in one-on-one fight, never mind with an additional troublemaker on the side causing mischief. They whipped the teleportation talisman to the ground at their feet. There was a large boom. Blue flames rolled towards the sky, and their figure vanished within. Wei Wuxian already knew that the gravedigger had a teleportation talisman, and that they'd find an opportunity to escape even if they caught him. The corpse that they had unearthed was already a clue, so he didn't consider this a total loss. He walked over to Lan Wangji. "Let's see who they dug out." He was slightly taken aback once he saw. The head of the corpse was, surprisingly, already bludgeoned. The gaping wound didn't show any blood or brains, but rather wads and wads of cotton that were already slightly blackened. Wei Wuxian yanked, and the head came off easily. Dangling the exquisitely made fake head, he said, "What the heck is this? There's a fake corpse made of cotton and rags buried in the Chung family cemetery?" Only then did Lan Wangji take the corpse. He weighed it in his hand and realized that there was something odd afoot. "It's not all fake." Wei Wuxian felt the corpse all over and discovered that its 4 limbs were limp, but the chest and abdomen area were hard and solid to the touch. He ripped the clothes off to see, and sure enough, the torso was real, but the other parts were all fake. The head and 4 limbs made of cotton must have been used to deceive this torso and make it think that it was still attached to its master. Judging by the skin color and where the left shoulder was fractured, this was the torso of their good buddy, which they had been seeking. The gravedigger, just now, had actually come to dig it out. Wei Wuxian rose to his feet. It seems the corpse hider is already taken notice of our investigation into this case. They were afraid that we'd dig up the torso, so they came to transfer it. We arrived just in the nick of time and ran into them. But his tone took a turn. Why was that smoke mask so familiar with your clan's sword technique? It was evident Lan Wangji was pondering the same thing as well, as a layer of frost on his face had not yet fully subsided. Wei Wuxian said, "That person's cultivation sure was strong enough that they could withstand the exhaustion of using a teleportation talisman. They'd also cast a spell on both their face and their sword. I can understand casting a spell on your face. You don't want people finding you out, duh. But an unknown cultivator would have no need to cast a concealment spell on their sword. Unless their sword had a bit of a reputation within the cultivating world, and it's famous enough that people could recognize the sword glare. In that case, they may have had no choice but to conceal it, since they were exposed in the moment and they brandished the sword." Wei Wuxian then asked cautiously, "Hang Wenjun, when you were crossing swords with him earlier, did you think they were someone you were familiar with?" Anything more specific than that would be discourteous to ask. For example, Lan Qizhen or Lan Qiren. Lan Wangji replied with certainty, "No." Wei Wuxian had full confidence in Lan Wangji's answer. He did not think that Lan Wangji was someone who would conceal the truth, or someone who couldn't face the truth. Since he said no, then it must have been so. He did not like to lie either. The way Wei Wuxian saw it, Lan Wangji would sooner cast a silencing spell on himself than lie. So Wei Wuxian immediately crossed off those 2 suspects. Then that makes things even more complicated. Lan Wangji packed the torso inside a different double-layered evil-sealing Cancun pouch and put it away properly. The 2 made a few rounds around the area, then leisurely rounded back to the tavern district. The waiter had indeed kept his word. Most of the other taverns on this street were closed, but their sign was still up and the lights were still on. The waiter was outside hugging a giant bowl, digging into his food, and when he saw them, he exclaimed in delight, "You're back! What'd you think? We always keep our word, eh? Did sirs see anything?" Wei Wuxian answered a few of his queries with a smile as he and Lan Wangji went to sit back in the same spot that they had taken during the day. The table and the floor around his feet were piled with liquor jugs, and he said, "Oh yeah, where were we? That grave-digging guy who jumped out of all of a sudden and interrupted us. I still don't know how Jiang Ping died." Thus, Lan Wangji continued to succinctly and flatly tell the rest of the tale without embellishments. Zhu Yang, Xiao Xingchen, and Sang Lan were gone one by one, whether missing or dead. One day, many years after this case was uncovered, Jiang Ping and his remaining family members were found dead from Lingqi overnight. What was more, Jiang Ping's eyes were also dug out. This time, no one could figure out who the murderer was. After all, everyone involved in the original case had already disappeared. However, there was one thing that was certain after examining the wounds. The sword that had inflicted Lingqi had been the one wielded by Zhao Jingchen. Sheng Zhao. Wei Wuxian paused in raising the bowl of liquor to his lips, dumbfounded at this turn of events. Lingqi with Zhao Jingchen's sword? Then was the culprit truly him? "Inconclusive, as Zhao Xingchen remains missing," Lan Wangji replied. "If the living person himself can't be found, has soul summoning been attempted?" Wei Wuxian asked. "Yes," Lan Wangji replied. "It has been unfruitful." Unfruitful. Then either he hadn't died, or he died and his soul had been dissipated. As an expert in this field, Wei Wuxian expressed his opinions on this matter. "Let me tell you, soul summoning isn't that absolute. The time and place must be exactly right, and mistakes can happen. I bet there are a lot of people who thought that was Zhao Xingchen's revenge, right? What about you, Hong Wenjun? What do you think? Lan Wangji shook his head slowly and said, I will not comment without knowing the full story. Wei Wuxian greatly admired his attitude and principles in handling matters. He smiled happily, taking a sip of liquor. He had heard Lan Wangji ask, What are your views? Wei Wuxian replied, Lingxi is a form of torture. Punishment is precisely its nature. And with his eyes dug out on top of that, it's very hard not to associate it with Zhao Xinqi's deal with his own eyes. So it can't be helped if people assume the incident is Zhao Xingchen's revenge, but... He contemplated for a second to find the right words. I don't know that, from the very beginning, Zhao Xingchen stepped forward to interfere in this matter for the sake of gaining Chengping's gratitude. He hadn't yet decided what would follow that before the waiter very attentively brought over 2 small plates of peanuts. Wei Wuxian was interrupted, but just as well, since he didn't need to continue any more. He looked up at Lan Wangji and smiled. Hong Wenjun, why are you looking at me like that? Nothing. I don't know the whole story either, so I also won't comment. You're very right. No one should presumptuously judge anything before understanding the inside story and the sequence of events. I only wanted 5 jugs, and you brought me an extra 5. I probably won't be able to finish all of these by myself. How about it? Drink with me? We're not in the cloud recesses, and it's not against the rules, right? He was prepared to be rejected at first, yet unexpectedly, Lan Wangji said, Let's. Wei Wuxian tisked. Hong Wenjun, you've really changed. In the past, when I drank a tiny jug in front of you, you were super mean, trying to throw me over the wall and hitting me too. And now you're even hiding Emperor's Smile in your own room, drinking in secret. Lan Wangji fixed his sleeves and said quietly, I did not touch a single jar of Emperor's Smile. Wei Wuxian teased, Why are you hiding the jugs then? Keeping them for me? Fine, fine. You didn't touch them. I believe you, all right. I won't mention it any more. Come. I absolutely have to see how many cups it'll take for a Lan descendant, an abstainer from drink, to collapse. He poured a bowl for Lan Wangji, who took it and downed it without hesitation. Wei Wuxian got inexplicably excited, staring at his face to see when the man would start flushing. Yet, unexpectedly, he stared for a long time, and neither the color nor the expression on Lan Wangji's face changed in the slightest. Those light-colored pupils gazed at him very calmly. There was no change at all. Wei Wuxian felt mildly disappointed, but just as he was about to egg the man on to drink another bowl, Lan Wangji's brows suddenly knitted. He lightly rubbed between his brows, and a minute later, with one hand propped up against his forehead, he closed his eyes. He fell asleep? He fell asleep! Normally, after drinking liquor, one should first become drunk and then fall asleep. How could Lan Wangji skip the drunk step and go directly to sleep? What he wanted to see was the drunk part. Wei Wuxian waved his hands at Lan Wangji, who looked stern and upright even in slumber, and clapped next to his ear. No answer. The man was surprisingly a 1-bowl lightweight. Wei Wuxian had never expected such a situation. He slapped his own leg, contemplating for a moment, then circled his right arm around Lan Wangji's shoulders and carried the man out of the little tavern, dragging and pulling all the way. He was already infinitely used to fishing things out of Lan Wangji's person, so he took out the money pouch and found them 2 rooms in an inn. He dropped Lan Wangji off in one of those rooms, removing his boots and tucking him into bed, and went out while it was still night. Wei Wuxian made his way to a remote place outside the city, where he took out his bamboo flute from his waist, pressed it to his lips, and played a segment of a melody. After that, he waited quietly. These past several days, Wei Wuxian and Lan Wangji had been together day in and day out, with no time alone, so he had been unable to summon Wen Ning. Aside from the fact that he had been trying to hide his identity before, there was another reason. There were lives from the Lan clan of Guzu that had been lost at Wen Ning's hands. Even if Lan Wangji treated him very well, Wei Wuxian couldn't just summon Wen Ning in front of him. Or rather, it was precisely because Lan Wangji was so good to him that Wei Wuxian felt too embarrassed to summon Wen Ning. No matter how thick-skinned he might be, this wasn't something to be shameless about. When his mind came back around, there was already an ominous clicking sound drifting to his ear. The figure of Wen Ning, his head hung low, surfaced beneath the shadows of the wall ahead. He was dressed entirely in black, melting in the darkness around him. Only those pupilless eyes were glaringly white, savagely white. Wei Wuxian folded his hands behind his back and slowly circled the man. Wen Ning shifted, seeming to want to circle around behind him in his steps, and Wei Wuxian stated aloud, "Stand properly." And so he behaved and stopped moving. That delicate, handsome face looked even more dejected. "Hand," Wei Wuxian said. Wen Ning extended his right hand, and Wei Wuxian caught his wrist, raising it up and closely inspecting the iron shackles and chains. Those were not ordinary chains. When Wen Ning went berserk, he was extremely violent. He could wring steel into mud. There was no way he could have intentionally allowed these chains to bang along behind him. They were probably a set of restraints specially fabricated to shackle Wen Ning. Bones crushed to ashes. Even the remnant piece of the Yin Tiger tally had been painstakingly restored. Of course, certain clans would also be drooling over the ghost general. How could they bear to have him crushed to ashes? Wei Wuxian sneered and stood next to Wen Ning. After some thought, he reached out and started slowly kneading around his hair. The one who kept the locked-up Wen Ning must have forbidden him from thinking on his own. For him to obey the commands of another, Wen Ning's consciousness needed to be destroyed, which meant that there was something planted inside his brain. Sure enough, after kneading a few times, Wei Wuxian pressed on a hard little spot in a certain acupuncture point on the right side of his head. He put his other hand on the matching point on the left side of Wen Ning's head, and there was the same hard little spot. It seemed to be something like the head of a nail. Wei Wuxian pinched the ends of both nails at the same time. Moving slowly, he pulled two long, black nails from Wen Ning's skull. These two black nails were several centimeters long, their thickness that of a red string that strung jade pendants, and they were buried deep inside Wen Ning's skull. The instant the nails were out, Wen Ning's features trembled slightly, and a layer of something like black blood vessels spiderwebbed within the white of his eyes. He appeared to be enduring the pain with immense effort. He was clearly a dead man, yet he could still feel such a thing as pain. The nails were carved with intricate and complex patterns. Their origins must have been extraordinary, and the skill of the one who had created them might have been considerable. If Wei Wuxian wanted Wen Ning to recover, he would have to wait for some time. Wei Wuxian tucked the nails away, then looked down at the chains around Wen Ning's wrists and ankles. Dragging those clink-clanking things around with him all the time won't do. I'll have to find a spiritual sword to cut them off. The first one that came to mind was, of course, Lan Wangji's bichen. Although taking a Lan's sword to help Wen Ning cut off those chains didn't feel quite right, that was the spiritual sword that he could most easily take, and he couldn't possibly leave Wen Ning like this, dragging around such a burden. Wei Wuxian thought, "How's this? I will go back to the inn right now. If Lanzhan is awake, then I won't borrow the sword. If Lanzhan is asleep, then I'll borrow Bichen for just a bit." With his mind made up, he turned right around. Unexpectedly, Lan Wangji was standing right behind him. Wei Wuxian's emotions were in a jumbled state after summoning Wen Ning, so it couldn't be helped that he wasn't sharp and alert. As for Lan Wangji, if he hadn't wanted anyone to notice his arrival, that was a simple feat for him to accomplish. So the moment Wei Wuxian looked back, he saw beneath the moonlight that icy face that was even colder. His heart stopped for a second, and he was slightly startled. He didn't know how long Lan Wangji had been there, or whether he had heard all that he had done and said. If Lan Wangji hadn't been drunk all along, but had followed behind him all the way, then this situation had been even more awkward. Not mentioning a word regarding Wen Ning in front of him, but coming out to summon Wen Ning surreptitiously and sneakily the moment the man was asleep, it really was awkward. Lan Wangji had his arms crossed, with the sword Bichen hugged between them, his expression extremely cold. Wei Wuxian had never seen him so obviously upset, so he felt he had to speak first and give an explanation to ease the mood. Hung Wenjun. Lan Wangji didn't respond. Wei Wuxian stood in front of Wen Ning and stared back at Lan Wangji. He rubbed his chin. For some reason, a powerful sense of guilt enveloped him. At last, Lan Wangji dropped the hand holding Bichen and stood a couple steps forward. Wei Wuxian saw him lunge straight for Wen Ning with his sword and thought he was going to slay him. His mind spun rapidly. Crap! Was Lansan pretending to be drunk just to wait for me to come out and summon Wen Ning so he could slay him? That makes sense. Who really drops after one bowl? He tried. Hung Wenjun, let me explain. Pa! Lan Wangji slapped Wen Ning. The sound of his slap was loud and crisp, but the attack didn't hold any real power. Wen Ning only stumbled back a number of steps from the strike, swaying once and then steadied himself before he stood properly once more, looking completely at a loss. Although Wen Ning's temper wasn't as explosive and easily provoked in his current state as it had been when he had gone berserk in the past, it wasn't that much better now. A sword had not even poked him on the night when he was surrounded on Mount Dafan, and he'd sent the attackers flying, going so far as picking one of them up by the neck to choke them. If Wei Wuxian hadn't stopped him, he would have strangled every single person present. But now Lan Wangji had just slapped him, and he still had his head down, looking like he didn't dare to retaliate. Wei Wuxian thought this somewhat odd, but he was more relieved. If Wen Ning struck back and these two started fighting, it wouldn't be easy to make peace. Presently, Lan Wangji seemed to think that this slap wasn't quite enough to express his ire. He shoved Wen Ning with one hand and pushed him meters away. He very unhappily said to Wen Ning, "Go away." Wei Wuxian suddenly noticed that something was off. Lan Wangji's two moves, whether they were actions or speech, they were both very childish. After pushing Wen Ning far enough away, Lan Wangji seemed to finally be satisfied. He turned around and walked back, stopping behind Wei Wuxian. Wei Wuxian stared at him, studying every detail. There was nothing unusual about Lan Wangji's face or expression. In fact, he looked even more solemn than usual, more serious, more flawless. His forehead ribbon was fastened extremely properly in place, his face unflushed, his breath unhurried, walking with the wind beneath his feet steady and firm. From the way he looked, he was still the same stern and proper, calm and collected, distinguished cultivator Hung Wenjun. But when he looked down, he noticed Lan Wangji's boots were on the wrong feet. Before he had come out, he had helped Lan Wangji remove his boots and tossed them by the bedside. And now Lan Wangji's left boot was on his right foot, and his right boot was on his left. Hung Wenjun, born of a prominent clan, who regarded grace and etiquette so highly, would never come out in public dressed like this. Wei Wuxian ventured, "Hung Wenjun, how many fingers is this?" He held up 2 fingers. Lan Wangji didn't respond, but solemnly reached out with both hands, one left and one right, and earnestly held both of those fingers. Pa! With that motion, Bichen was dropped to the ground by its master. This was definitely not the normal Lanzan. "Han Wenjun, are you drunk?" Wei Wuxian asked. "No," Lan Wangji replied. Drunk people never admitted that they were drunk. Wei Wuxian pulled his fingers back, but Lan Wangji maintained his hold, still absorbed in his slacked fists. Wei Wuxian watched him speechlessly. Standing in the cold night breeze, he looked up at the moon. Other people slept after they got drunk, but Lan Wangji slept first and then was drunk. And when he was inebriated, he looked no different from usual, so it was so difficult to tell. Wei Wuxian had had countless drinking buddies way back when. He had seen hundreds, if not thousands, of instances of bizarre drunken buffoonery. Some bawled around, some giggled endlessly, some lost it and made a scene, some passed out right on the streets, some lamented and wished for death, and some mewed weeping accusations of, "Why don't you want me anymore?" This was his first time seeing Lan Wangji's type. Quiet, composed, standing in appearance, but incredibly weird in action. The corners of his lips twitched, and he had to force back his desire to laugh. He picked up Bichen, which had been dropped to the ground, and slung it onto his back. "All right, come with me. Let's go back." He couldn't leave Lan Wangji running around outside in this state. Gosh, heaven knew what else he would do. Fortunately, Lan Wangji seemed very obliging now that he was drunk. He inclined his head in a quiet, well-mannered motion and started walking with him. If anyone was passing by, they would believe that they were seeing two good friends roaming the night in deep conversation and would praise such elegant behavior. Behind them, Wen Ning quietly caught up. Wei Wuxian was just about to say something to him when Lan Wangji whipped around and struck out with another enraged smack. This time, he slapped Wen Ning's head askew, bowing it even lower. Even though the muscles of his face were stiff from rigor mortis and he had no facial expression whatsoever, his eyes displayed no emotion to speak of, it was possible to tell that he looked very aggrieved. Wei Wuxian didn't know whether to cry or laugh as he pulled Lan Wangji's arm back. "What are you hitting him for?" Lan Wangji spoke in a threatening tone that he would have never used if he was sober. "Go away." Wei Wuxian knew that you can't oppose drunk people. He quickly said, Okay, we'll do what you say. I'll make him go away." Then he pulled out the bamboo flute. However, before the flute made it to his lips, Lan Wangji snatched it over. He stated, "You're not allowed to play for him." Wei Wuxian teased, "Why are you so bossy, huh?" Lan Wangji repeated unhappily, "You are not allowed to play for him." Wei Wuxian realized something. The drunk often had much to say, and since Lan Wangji wasn't normally into speaking, after he had had too much to drink, he would repeat the same sentence in infinitum. He thought that since Lan Wangji disliked the sight of the wicked arts, he probably didn't like him controlling Wen Ning with the flute. He would have to smooth his ruffled fur a bit, and thus he promised, "All right, I will only play for you. Is that okay?" Lan Wangji gave a satisfied but he was still fiddling with the flute in his hands and appeared to have no interest in giving it back to him yet. So Wei Wuxian had no choice but to blow 2 whistles instead. He said to Wen Ning, "Keep on hiding yourself. Do it properly and don't let anyone discover you." Wen Ning looked like he really wanted to follow along, but since he had received an order and was afraid that Lan Wangji might slap him further, he very slowly turned around and, dragging his feet, clinking and clanking, walked away somewhat dejectedly. Wei Wuxian turned to Lan Wangji. "Lanzan, how come your face doesn't even turn a little bit red when you're drunk?" Since Lan Wangji looked way too normal, even more normal than Wei Wuxian, he couldn't help but speak to him in a normal tone. Yet unexpectedly, when Lan Wangji heard him, he suddenly reached out, hugged Wei Wuxian's shoulders, and yanked him into his arms. Caught off guard, Wei Wuxian crashed headfirst into his chest. He was still dizzy when Lan Wangji's voice came from above. "Listen to the heartbeat." "What?" Lan Wangji said, "The face doesn't show it. Listen to the heartbeat." As he spoke, his chest vibrated with the low sound, and his heart beat constantly and strong. Thump thump, thump thump, thump thump. It was a little on the fast side. Wei Wuxian understood and pulled his head back. "I can't tell from your face, so I have to figure it out by listening to your heartbeat?" Mm, Lan Wangji honestly replied. Wei Wuxian hugged his belly as he laughed. Could Lan Wangji's skin be so thick that not even a blush could surface? He didn't look like the type. An inebriated Lan Wangji was so surprisingly honest, and compared to his normal self, his actions and speech were, well, they were unrestrained. It was so rare to see such an honest and frank Lan Wangji. So to tell Wei Wuxian to stay courteous without playing a little prank? Yeah, right. He rushed Lan Wangji back to the inn. Once they opened the door, Wei Wuxian pushed him onto the bed, then removed his mismatched pair of boots. Considering Lan Wangji likely didn't know how to wash his own face right now, Wei Wuxian removed Lan Wangji's forehead ribbon and fetched a bucket of hot water and a cloth. He wrung the cloth dry and folded it into a square, then gently wiped his face. During the process, Lan Wangji did not make any protests, but obediently allowed his own face to be squished around. When the cloth washed near his eyes, he'd squint, but otherwise he kept staring at Wei Wuxian without blinking once. Wei Wuxian was brewing all sorts of mischief in his mind, and seeing his clear, innocent eyes, he couldn't resist giving the underside of Lan Wangji's chin a light scratch with his finger, chuckling as he did. What are you looking at me for? Am I good looking? Wei Wuxian happened to be done with the washing now, so he didn't wait for Lan Wangji to respond before tossing the cloth back into the water bucket. Your face is washed. Do you want to drink some water? There was no response behind him. When he turned around to look, Lan Wangji had the water bucket in his hands and had already dunked his face. Wei Wuxian, greatly alarmed, hurriedly snatched the bucket back, putting it aside. I didn't tell you to drink that water. Lan Wangji lifted his head, looking impassive as drops of clear water rolled down his chin, wetting his front collar. Wei Wuxian watched him, his mind filled with mixed emotions, not knowing what to say. So did he drink the water or not? Lanzan best not remember anything when he sobers up, or he'll be too ashamed to face anyone for the rest of his life. Wei Wuxian used his sleeve to wipe the droplets dripping down off Wangji's chin, then put his arm around his shoulders. Hang Wenjun, are you going to do whatever I tell you right now? Lan Wangji said. You'll answer anything I ask of you? Wei Wuxian pushed a knee onto the bed and crooked a smile. Well then, let me ask you. Have you ever snuck a sip of Emperor's Smile that you hid in your room? No. Do you like rabbits? Yes. Have you ever violated the rules? Yes. Do you have someone you like? Yes. Wei Wuxian pulled his punches with his questions, since he didn't actually plan on prying into Lan Wangji's personal business. He was simply ensuring that the man was indeed going to answer every one of his questions. He continued, What do you think about Jiancheng? A frown. Humph. What do you think about Wen Ning? Clear disinterest. Wei Wuxian pointed at himself with a wide, happy grin. What about this one? Mine, Lan Wangji answered. Lan Wangji gazed intently at him, repeating, impeccably, clearly emphasizing the word. Mine. Wei Wuxian suddenly got it. He took off Bichan and thought, I pointed at myself just now, but Lanzan probably misunderstood this one as Bichan on my back. Having thought this, he got off the bed and walked around the room from left to right, from east to west, with Bichan in hand. Sure enough, Lan Wangji's eyes also closely followed him wherever he went. So very candid, so very open, so very direct, so very naked. Wei Wuxian was practically going weak knees from the gaze, which was fervent as fire. He raised Bichan before Lan Wangji's eyes. Want it? I do, Lan Wangji replied. He seemed to think that this wasn't enough to demonstrate his desire, so he seized the hand that was holding Bichan, his light-colored eyes gazing directly at Wei Wuxian. He breathed a soft sigh, then pronounced each word with force as he repeated himself. I do. Wei Wuxian knew full well that this man was a drunken mess. knew what he said wasn't directed at him. But still, those 2 words struck him so hard his arm went weak, and so did his legs. He thought, honestly, this Langzan, what a terrifying man he would be if he were to be this honest and enthusiastic towards a girl. Wei Wuxian regained his composure and asked, "How did you recognize me? Why did you help me?" Lan Wangji moved his lips softly, and Wei Wuxian moved closer, ready to hear the answer. Yet, unexpectedly, Lan Wangji suddenly changed expression and shoved, pushing Wei Wuxian down on the bed. Candlelight was extinguished with a sweep of his hand, and Bichen was once again dropped on the ground by its master. The push made Wei Wuxian see stars, and he thought perhaps Lan Wangji had sobered up, and he called out, "Lanzan?" A certain familiar spot on the small of his back was tapped, and he felt sore and numb all over, unable to move, just like the first night he'd spent at the cloud recesses. Lan Wangji withdrew his hand and lay down next to him. He covered both of them with the blanket and tucked the corners around Wei Wuxian carefully and thoroughly. "It is haytime. Rest." As it turned out, it was that terrifying Lan routine at work. Wei Wuxian's question session was cut short. He stared at the ceiling of the bedroom. "Can we not chat and rest at the same time?" "No," Lan Wangji said. Well, all right. There would always be other chances to get Lan Wangji drunk. He'd get his answer sooner or later. "Lanzan, undo this. I rented 2 rooms. We don't have to squeeze together in the same bed," Wei Wuxian said. After a moment of silence, Lan Wangji reached over and groped under the blanket, and then slowly started undoing Wei Wuxian's sash. Wei Wuxian shouted, "It's fine, I'm good. I didn't mean that kind of undo. Okay, I'll lie here. I'm sleeping." Within the darkness, they were deathly still. Wei Wuxian was silent for a while before he spoke again. I finally understand why your family is banned liquor. 1 bowl lightweight, and an awful drunk, too. If every Lan is like you and they're drunk, liquor deserves to be prohibited. Whoever drinks should be beaten." Lan Wangji had his eyes closed. He raised his hand to cover Wei Wuxian's mouth. "Shh," he hushed. Wei Wuxian's fit of annoyance was stuck between his chest and his teeth, unable to be expelled and unable to be dispelled. Ever since he had returned, it seemed like every time he wanted to tease Lan Wangji like he had in the past, he had ultimately become his own undoing. That shouldn't be. Where had he gone wrong? This time, Wei Wuxian did not shut his eyes for the entire night. He stayed awake, firmly hanging on until just before Mo time. And when he felt that numbing, aching limpness finally passed and his limbs could move again, he calmly and unhurriedly stripped off his top robes under the blanket and tossed them off the bed. Then he pulled on Lan Wangji's sash and forcibly tugged his top robe down by half. At first, he'd wanted to completely strip him too, but halfway through the act, he was slightly startled to see the brand under Lan Wangji's collarbone. His hands unconsciously stopped. Remembering the disciplined whip scars on his back as well, Wei Wuxian knew that this wasn't right. He was about to immediately pull Lan Wangji's clothes back into place, but in the momentary delay, Lan Wangji seemed to have a chill. He shifted slightly, with furrowed brows, and then slowly opened his eyes. The moment his eyes opened, he tumbled off the bed. The elegant Hung Wenjun couldn't be blamed for his entirely inelegant overreaction. No man would have a thought in his head for elegance when, after a night of drunkenness, they awoke half-naked in a bed with another naked man, both of them pressed tightly together skin to skin under the same blankets. Wei Wuxian used the blanket to half-cover his chest, revealing his smooth and bare shoulders. Lan Wangji gaped. "You." Wei Wuxian answered nasally. "Hmm?" Lan Wangji said, "Last night I—" Wei Wuxian winked and propped up his cheek with one hand, smirking wickedly. "Hung Wenjun, you were so bold last night. Do you not remember anything from yesterday evening?" Wei Wuxian asked. Looked like he really didn't. Lan Wangji's face was paled to the color of snow. It was good that he didn't. If Lan Wangji remembered that Wei Wuxian had snuck out the night before to summon Wen Ning and started asking questions, it would have been bad if Wei Wuxian had to lie, and it would have been bad if he told the truth, too. After his many failed dalliances and many instances of shooting himself in the foot, Wei Wuxian had finally recovered his past might for once, and he struck back at Lan Wangji. Although he was tempted to chase after more victories, he also still wanted to trick Lan Wangji into drinking more for his own petty amusement. So he couldn't afford to have the man traumatized and on his guard from now on. Quitting while he was ahead, Wei Wuxian peeled back the blanket to show his trousers in proper order and his yet-to-be-removed boots. What an honorable man! Huang Wenjun, I only stripped our clothes for a joke. You remain pure and unsullied, don't worry. Lan Wangji was still frozen on the spot. But before he could manage to say anything, the sound of crashing dishware came from the center of the room. This sound was not foreign. This was the second time they had heard it. The evil-sealing Cancun pouch pinned on the table was agitated again and had toppled the teapot and teacups. It was more violent this time, with all 3 pouches going off at once. One of them had been a drunken mess the night before, and the other had been getting tossed around by said mess, so naturally they had put the duet at the back of their minds. Wei Wuxian was worried that Lan Wangji might accidentally stab him to death on the bed in the moment of impulse born in his immense shock, so he hurriedly said, "Work comes first. Come, we gotta get down to work first." He grabbed a robe and draped it on, scrambling out of bed, and reached out for Lan Wangji, who had just risen to his feet. He had meant to pull him up, but his gesture looked like he was going to rip off his clothes. Lan Wangji hadn't recovered yet from his scare and took a step back. Something tripped him, and he wobbled in place. When he looked down, he realized that it was the sword Bichen, which had lain there the entire night. By now, the rope that tied the pouch had already been worked loose, and a ghastly white arm was crawling halfway out of the opening of the tiny Chinkun pouch. Wei Wuxian reached into Lan Wangji's half-opened robes and fished around, digging out a flute. "Huang Wenjun, come on, don't be scared. I wasn't going to do anything to you. I was only taking back the flute that you took from me last night. I need it back," he said, and even very thoughtfully helped him pull the robe over his shoulders and tie the sash. Lan Wangji stared at him with a complicated look, looking like he really wanted to ask the details of what had happened the night before, after he had gotten drunk. But attending to business was a habitual priority, so he forced himself to endure it. He composed his expression and took out his 7-string guqin. 3 evil-sealing Chinkun pouches, 1 sealed with 1 left arm, 1 sealed with 2 legs, and 1 sealed with the torso. These 3 body parts could already constitute most of a body. They affected each other, their resentment increasing exponentially, and becoming more troublesome than before. The 2 of them played rest 3 times before the agitation gradually ceased. Wei Wuxian put away the flute and was just about to clean up the corpse parts strewn across the ground when he suddenly went, "Oh." He said, "Our good buddy trained pretty good, eh?" The sash on the funeral garb worn by the torso had come loose. The collar tugged askew to reveal a solid and powerful body of a man. His shoulders broad, his waist thin, his abs defined, strong, but not exaggerated. It was a manly body innumerable men dreamed of having themselves. Wei Wuxian checked it out every which way and couldn't resist giving the abs a slap or two. "Huang Wenjun, look at him. If he were alive and I gave him a smack, it'd probably rebound and smack me right back. How in the world did he train and manage those results?" The tip of Lan Wangji's brows seemed to twitch. He didn't speak. Unexpectedly, Wei Wuxian slapped it twice more, and Lan Wangji finally, expressionlessly, took the evil-sealing Cancun pouch and silently began to seal the corpse. Wei Wuxian hastened to get out of the way. A moment later, Lan Wangji had resealed all the body parts and even tied a bunch of dead knots around the pouch. Wei Wuxian didn't think anything strange of it. He looked down at himself to inspect the shape of his current body, raised his brows, then tied his sash properly and appeared to don an air of decency once more. He glanced to see that Lan Wangji had put away the Cancun pouch and was unwittingly casting looks his way, his eyes seemingly full of a certain hesitation to speak. Wei Wuxian purposefully broached the subject. Hung Wenjun, why are you looking at me like that? Still worried? Trust me, I didn't do anything to you last night. And of course, you didn't do anything to me either. Lan Wangji hesitated for a moment. Then, seeming to have made up his mind about something, he asked quietly, Last night, other than taking the flute, what else did you do, right? Wei Wuxian said. Not much, you just talked a lot. Lan Wangji's snow-white throat bobbed once. Talked about what? Nothing much, Wei Wuxian replied. Just, for example, you really like... Lan Wangji's eyes stiffened. Really like rabbits, Wei Wuxian finished. Lan Wangji closed his eyes and turned his head away. Wei Wuxian very thoughtfully consoled him. It's fine. Rabbits are so cute. Who doesn't like them? I like them too. To eat. Come on now, Hung Wenjun. You drank so much last night. Well, not that much actually. But you were so drunk last night. You probably don't feel that great this morning. Go wash your face, drink some water, and then sit for a bit longer. We'll depart after you feel a little better. The direction that it's pointing this time is south, partially to the west. I'll go down and buy some breakfast. I'll leave you alone. He was just about to leave when Lan Wangji called out coldly, Wait. Wei Wuxian looked back. What? Lan Wangji stared at him fixedly for a whole minute before asking at last, Do you have money? Wei Wuxian smiled. Yes. Don't I know where you keep your money? I'll bring you breakfast too, okay? Take your time, Hung Wenjun. Do not rush. He exited the room, closed the door, and stood in the hallway hugging his belly, laughing soundlessly for a good while. Lan Wangji seemed to have been dealt a heavy blow. He locked himself in the room for a very long time, and while waiting for him, Wei Wuxian leisurely descended the stairs and went out of the inn, strolling around on the streets and buying some random food items. He sat on the steps, his eyes scrunched into crescents as he ate, enjoying the sun. After a while, a group of 13 or 14-year-old children ran past in the streets. A child leading the front ran fast in the wind, and his hand was yanking a long string. At the end of the string was a kite, flying neither high nor low, bobbing up and down as it did. The children behind had toy bows and arrows, and they shouted as they chased that kite, shooting miniature arrows at it. Wei Wuxian had loved playing this game in the past. Archery was a mandatory art studied by every clan junior, but they didn't usually like shooting properly at normal targets. Besides shooting nefarious creatures during night hunts, they enjoyed shooting kites like this. Everyone got a kite. Whoever could fly it the highest, farthest, and shoot the most on mark was the winner. This game had been popular only among the younger juniors of various cultivation clans, but when the trend caught on, children from ordinary families liked it too. Of course, their little arrows paled in comparison to the power packed in those wielded by privileged and proficient clan juniors. Back when Wei Wuxian was at Lotus Pier and played kite shooting with the young juniors, he'd won first place many times. Jiancheng, on the other hand, was always second. Either his kite flew too far and the arrows couldn't reach, or he'd shoot his kite, but it hadn't flown as far as Wei Wuxian's. The two of them had a kite the whole size larger than everybody else's, constructed in the shape of a flying Yao beast, with dazzling, extravagant colors, a mouth open in a howl, and several pointy tails drooping down to roil in the winds. Seen from afar, the kite was extraordinarily vibrant and vivacious, not savage so much as charming and adorable. The spine of this kite has been personally constructed by Zhang Fengmin before being passed off to Zhang Yanli to paint it for the two of them. So every time they took it out to compete, they'd always felt a sense of pride. Having remembered this, the corners of Wei Wuxian's lips curled lightly, and he unconsciously looked up to see what the kites these children were flying looked like. All he saw was a big, round shape, completely gold, and he wondered, what is that thing? A pancake? Or some monster I don't know of? Just then, a gust of wind blew past. The kite wasn't flying very high in the first place, and not in an open, spacious area, so it fell immediately when the wind hit. One of the children called out, "Gah, the sun's fallen down!" Wei Wuxian instantly understood. This group of children was most likely playing a game that mimicked the Sunshot campaign. This was Yu Yang. Back when the Wen clan of Qishan was at the peak of its prominence, they were lorded over everyone and everything, and Yu Yang was technically not too far from Qishan. The locals must have suffered profoundly at their hands, either from rampaging Yao beasts that they hadn't looked up properly, or by being abused and humiliated by the domineering cultivators of their clan. After the Sunshot campaign, when the Wen clan was crushed by the combined might of the other clans, their century-old foundation collapsed in an instant. Most places near the Qishan area all happily engaged in pastimes that celebrated the annihilation of the Wen clan, going as far as to transforming such pastimes into cherished traditions. This game was probably one of such traditions. The children stopped the chase and gathered around, looking very troubled. They started discussing the situation at hand. "What do we do? The sun hasn't been shot yet, and it dropped on its own. Who will be the big boss now?" Someone raised their hand. "It's gonna be me, of course. I'm Jin Guanyao. The Wen family's big villain was killed by me." Wei Wuxian sat there on the steps in front of the inn, watching with relish. In games like this one, the now infinitely glorious cultivating chief Liang Fangjun was, of course, the most popular character. Although his background was too embarrassing to speak of, that was precisely why the higher he climbed, the more admirable he grew. During the Sunshot campaign, he had spent years as a spy, and took on the role like a fish released into water. He had the entire Wen army of Qingxia fooled both inside and out, and they ran around in circles, unknowingly betraying their own secrets. After the Sunshot campaign, he curried favor in every way possible, using his quick and clever wit in thousands of ways, until finally he sat in the position of cultivation chief, the head of the cultivation world. Such a life was worthy of being called legendary. If Wei Wuxian had been the one playing, he'd want to try being Jin Guanyao once too. Picking this kid to be the big boss made a lot of sense. Another child objected. "I'm Ni Mingju. I've won the most battles, and I've taken the biggest number of captives. I should be the big boss." Jin Guanyao said, "But I'm the cultivation chief." Ni Mingju waved his fist. "So what? You're still my Sandi. Don't you still have to run away with your tail between your legs at the sight of me?" Jin Guanyao was indeed very cooperative, and very into the act. He hunched his shoulders and ran off. Another one said, "You short-lived devil." To have chosen a certain cultivation leader naturally meant that the child in question probably looked up to and liked said cultivator. Ni Mingju got mad. "Jin Zizhuan, you died sooner than me. You're even more short-lived." Jin Zizhuan refused to yield. "So what if I'm short-lived? I'm still ranked third." "That third is third place only in looks." Just then, one of the kids seemed to grow tired of running and standing. He shuffled to the steps, sat down next to Wei Wuxian, waved, and said like a good old peacekeeper, Okay, stop fighting. I'm the Yiling Patriarch. I'm the most powerful. I suppose I can maybe be the big boss." Wei Wuxian was speechless. He looked down. Sure enough, this kid had a tiny, thin wooden stick stuck at his waist. This was probably Chen Qing. Only a small child would be simple enough not to fuss about good and bad, and only care about rating things by strength, and therefore condescend to be the Yiling Patriarch for a bit. Another one countered, "No, I'm Sandu Shengshu. I'm the most powerful one." Yiling Patriarch said, very understandingly, "Oh, Jiangcheng, can you beat me in anything? Haven't you lost to me every time? Where did you get the face to say that you're the most powerful? Aren't you embarrassed?" Jiangcheng retorted, "Humph, I can't match you? Don't you remember how you died?" That shallow smile on Wei Wuxian's lips suddenly dispersed. It was like being jabbed by an extremely poisonous little needle without warning. A slight, stabbing pain suddenly flared up all over his body. The Yiling patriarch next to him clapped. "Look at me, clenching in my left hand and the tiger tally in my right, plus the ghost general. I'm invincible, ha 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 ha!" He raised a stick in his left hand and a rock in his right, and laughed maniacally. "Where's Wen Ning? Come out!" A small child raised his hand among the crowd and said meekly, "I'm here. I just want to say that since this is during the Sunshot campaign, I haven't died yet." Wei Wuxian felt that he needed to step in now. He spoke up. "Cultivation leaders, may I ask you a question?" No adult had ever intervened when this group of children played this game before, and it wasn't even to scold but to pose a serious question. Yiling Patriarch looked at him in wonder and caution. "What's your question?" "How come there's no one from the Lan clan of Guzu?" Wei Wuxian asked. "Oh, there is." "Where?" Yiling Patriarch pointed at a child who had not spoken a single word throughout. "That one's him." Wei Wuxian looked. Sure enough, that child was very delicately handsome, obviously solidly on the path to becoming an attractive young man. On his smooth forehead was fastened a white rope, a substitute for the forehead ribbon. Wei Wuxian asked, "Who's he?" Yiling Patriarch pursed his lips disdainfully. "Lan Wangji." All right. This group of children had truly captured the essence. One certainly should keep their mouth shut and not speak when playing Lan Wangji. The corners of Wei Wuxian's lips curled up anew all of a sudden. That extremely poisonous little needle was pulled out and tossed into an unknown corner, and the stabbing pain was all swept away in an instant. Wei Wuxian muttered to himself, "Well, ain't that strange? How can such a dull person always make me so happy?" When Lan Wangji finally came downstairs, he saw Wei Wuxian sitting on the steps with a bunch of kids sitting next to him and sharing meat buns. Wei Wuxian ate his bun as he directed two little kids pressed back to back in front of him. "Right now, the ones in front of you are millions of Wen cultivators, every single one of them fully decked out in military gear, and they have surrounded you in an impenetrable circle. Look sharp, that's right, just like that. Good. Lan Wangji, pay attention. You're not your usual self right now. No, you're covered in blood. You're very heavy with killing intent. Your eyes are fierce. Wei Wuxian, get closer to him. Do you know how to spin your flute? Let's see it. No, spin it with one hand. Do it more nonchalantly. Do you know what that means? Here, let me teach you." Little Wei Wuxian owed and passed the little thin stick over to him. Big Wei Wuxian expertly twirled Chen with 2 fingers, and the group of kids crowded over in a flash, exclaiming aloud in awe. Lan Wangji didn't comment. He approached silently. When Wei Wuxian saw him come over, he dusted off the dirt from his bum and bid farewell to the children. It was great effort for him to stand up, and as they went, he laughed the entire way as if he had been poisoned with something strange. Lan Wangji still didn't comment. "I'm sorry, Ang Wenjun. I already shared the breakfast that I bought for you with them. Let's go buy some more later." Lan Wangji said. "How was it? Weren't those 2 kids adorable? The one with the rope tied around his head. Guess who he was imitating?" After a long moment of speechlessness, Lan Wangji finally couldn't hold back any longer, and he asked, "What else did I do last night exactly?" It couldn't be that simple. Otherwise, why would Wei Wuxian still be laughing even now? Wei Wuxian waved him off. Nothing. You didn't do anything. It was me who was being nonsensical." "All right. Han Wenjun, I'm about to talk about something very serious now." "Speak," Lan Wangji said. Wei Wuxian began in all seriousness. The coffin banging at the Cheng family cemetery had been still for 10 years, but it suddenly started up again, and it definitely wasn't a coincidence. There must have been a cause. "What do you think the cause is?" Lan Wangji asked. "Good question. I think the cause is the torso being dug up," Wei Wuxian said. Lan Wangji said. His thoughtful expression reminded Wei Wuxian of his serious face the previous night, when he had drunkenly held onto Wei Wuxian's 2 fingers, and he painfully held back his laughter. He said solemnly, "I was thinking, the dismemberment can't have been a simple act of revenge regarding a personal grudge, but a malicious subduing spell. The one who dismembered the corpse intentionally selected places with unusual hauntings to settle the body parts. Fight poison with poison. Maintain equilibrium through mutual checks and balances," Lan Wangji said. "Correct," Wei Wuxian said. "So when that gravedigger dug out the torso yesterday, there was nothing to subdue the resentful spirits of the Chung family, and the coffin banging started up again. The concept and method are the same as the Ni Saber's offering hall. Perhaps it was mimicking the Ni family's Saber's offering hall from the start. It seems this individual is deeply connected with both the Ni clan of Qingshi and the Lan clan of Guzu. They're probably not just nobody." "There are not many such individuals," Lan Wangji said. Wei Wuxian agreed. Things are slowly coming to light, and since the other party has started trying to move the corpse bits, that means that he, or they, are starting to panic. They'll definitely make a move soon, so even if we can't find them, they'll come knocking. With all the searching, they'll give themselves away sooner or later. Besides, our good buddy's arm will point the way for us. But we should probably move faster, too. With only the right arm and head left, we have to get those before they do." The 2 traveled southwestward. This time, the location the left hand was pointing to was Shodong, a place blanketed in thick fog, and it was a ghost city that locals avoided at all costs. This audiobook continues in Book 2.